os professores do curso de arquitetura a chegar e alguns estudantes. Muito bem, obrigado por terem saído da sala de aula, da tradicional sala de aula do século XX e terem vindo até ao nosso encontro. É uma época especial de final de semestre, todos sabemos, não é? Estamos em época de avaliações, terminar trabalhos de fim de ano. Portanto, obrigado redobradamente pela vossa presença, e em especial ao curso de arquitetura. Este ciclo acontece todas as semanas, chamado Great Artists on Campus, mais ou menos todas as semanas, com artistas, intelectuais, pensadores da contemporaneidade, e é aberto à cidade de Lisboa. Portanto, temos aqui pessoas que vêm não por serem estudantes ou professores aqui, mas porque são pessoas interessadas em ouvir, quem sabe, um pouco mais do que nós. Hoje vamos ter um convidado muito especial, o Henry Broome. O Henry Broome é ensaísta, crítico, escreve há vários anos para uma revista importante de Londres, chamada Art Monthly. Vocês podem visitá-la online. Olá, João. Traz uma turma também? Fantástico. Muito bem. E o Henry Broome thank you very much for your presence and for accepting our invitation. O Henry Broome vai nos falar de questões que são muito importantes para todos nós, mas penso para os estudantes de arquitetura particularmente interessantes: a questão do espaço público, a questão da relação entre arte e espaço público, a privatização do espaço público, enfim, questões que estão todas elas interligadas na contemporaneidade. Nós sabemos bem que há muitas cidades que já não têm bancos onde as pessoas se sentarem, queremos ir à casa de banho e não há casas de banho públicas, não é? Temos que pagar por uma casa de banho de café ou de cabine, mas em que tem que se pagar, etc. Tudo isso passa pela privatização do espaço público, e a arte pública podem ter um papel aí diferenciador, transformador deste recuo, este movimento de recuo que o espaço público está a ter em muitas cidades no Ocidente. Portanto, vamos ouvi-lo com atenção. Obrigado mais uma vez pela vossa presença. O Henry Broome vai falar mais ou menos 45 minutos e, a seguir a isso, abrimos o debate à plateia para Q&A, perguntas e respostas, debate como se quer numa sociedade viva e numa universidade do século XXI. Está bem? Obrigado pela vossa presença. Henry Broome, it's your turn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping you can all hear me very well. Yeah, just nod if you can't or shake your head. Yeah, it's okay? Good. So yeah, João, thank you very much for that warm introduction. I understood a few words. I'm from London. I'm living in Portugal, in Lisbon, for 2 months at the moment. So trying to apply some of the learnings that I've been researching in the UK and London particularly, and exploring urban spaces in Lisbon here as well. But yeah, thank you also for coming as well. I know you're in the final stages of your assessments right now, so it's a busy and stressful period for you all, so thank you very much. So my name is Henry Broome. I'm a writer and art critic. I write for Art Monthly, Bomb Magazine, Flash Art, and as I say, my writing and research focuses on public art and urban spatial exclusion. And for me, you can really read the politics of a city through public art. Sculptures and statues particularly are signs for who is and who is not welcome in civic space. This sort of research interest really came out of one particular essay that I wrote called Lines for Redevelopment, and this explored how property developer funded public art forms a physical extension of gentrification schemes in London. So artists and developers are using the same materials and processes, and you can really see that. Some of you might have been here to the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, and you've got on the left-hand side there, sorry, you've got Anish Kapoor's Orbit sculpture, and that is made of the same steel as the stadium right next door. So it's made by the same multinational company, Tata Steel. And then more recently, we can look here. I could have some water, if possible. Has anyone got any water? Sorry, the pollen in Lisbon right now is quite strong. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. So, just have a look at the image. So yeah, this was a piece I wrote called Artificial Local Colour. And this examined how property developers, again, are constructing these multicolored sculptures and installations, and they're trying to give very kind of sterile, dead spaces a feeling of cultural vitality, life, and energy, because these, thank you very much, because these spaces, they really are drained of life. They're so soulless. But also, it's an attempt to really replace the marginalized black and brown working class people that have been displaced by these property development schemes as well. So, and they go really, really far with this. So what you were looking at before was a sort of walkway, but here they've actually commissioned an artist to paint cranes. So you really have the aestheticization of the building development process. I've come to talk to you today about homelessness, sanitation, and public art, and how they really intersect. This lecture really comes out of an article I wrote called Pissed Off. And Pissed Off is the title of a David Hammond's artwork. It was a performance. He's an American artist, an African-American artist, and we'll kind of look at his work in more detail a bit later on. And this lecture is really about sort of the politics of space, public art, and homelessness. So on the left-hand side there, what you're looking at is a picture of outside St. Paul's Cathedral. And that is a form of architecture that's been built that's designed to stop people urinating in the corner of the cathedral. And then on the right-hand side, I took this picture 2 days ago. This is right outside of the apartment I'm living in Lisbon. And these are heat vents that have these spikes on to stop homeless people sleeping on them and taking the warmth from the vents. So walking the streets of London, but also Lisbon, public art, public space can be a kind of barrier to entry for people on the margins of society, part of a system of hostile architecture designed to restrict homeless people's access to public space, as well as hygiene facilities. And saying all this, I still believe in the transformative potential of public art. As we'll see in this lecture, when people are denied their most basic needs, housing, toilets, clean water, public art might provide a site to express collective anger. So, this talk is a series of rhyming stories and experiences. We'll drift from city to city, from London to New York, from the past to the present, between art and also theory, exposing the injustice of housing policy and the fight for free and open public space. So a few days before I'd finished that article, I went to see a Richard Serra sculpture in a development called Broadgate. It's an office and retail estate just behind Liverpool Street Station in London. It's a semi-private space full of luxury shops and CCTV cameras. You know, there are Rolex shops and security guards patrolling the area. And there I saw something quite unexpected. What you're looking at in this picture is Fulcrum. This is a sculpture by Richard Serra. It was completed in 1987, and it's made up of 5 huge slabs of steel that are kind of balanced against each other. And they create this hollow, this internal hollow. And yeah, you can start to begin to see there is like a stream of urine that is running down, and there are these gutters that have been installed inside. So the developer, probably not so much the artist, has been thinking about how this space might be used by homeless people and trying to sort of preempt that and take a course of action. So in a 1994 Art Monthly article, Public Art, Gallery Art by Another Name, Miles Malcolm at the time called this sculpture a developer's exclamation mark, almost sort of showing off. So I was a few meters away from this Serra and taking it in from a distance when a security guard walked up to the sculpture and held up a device to a black circle on the inside wall. And I wasn't sure exactly what he'd done, but I had an idea. So I ran after him and asked him like what he did. And he said that he has to check that no homeless people are living inside or urinating or taking drugs. That's the black circle there, and you can see it's numbered as well. So the security guards, they tap this black circle to confirm that everything is okay. So the sculpture is part of this security checkpoint of the estate. It's a part of establishing a kind of perimeter, a security perimeter, a homeless-free zone. And I had a similar experience visiting Germany, actually a few months earlier. So I was with a friend and I traveled to a sculpture park there, and it was located between the red light district and the financial quarter, a zone shadowed by towering banking HQs, their shiny exterior blue glass impenetrable to outside eyes. You know, there's this kind of like wall of capital that stops you looking into their businesses. And in this sculpture park, there was plenty of traditional statues, Friedrich Schiller, Beethoven, reclining female nudes as well. But at the park's edge, on the border with the ring road, we came across a strange structure, a black cylindrical shaft, 4 meters high and 2 meters in diameter. And my friend said, looking up at her phone in disbelief, apparently it's a public urinal designed by an artist. And I don't have pictures of this, and you'll come to understand maybe why. The steel door was shut, no handle on the outside, and spotting a small gap between the top of the frame, my friend tried to open it up. And I was already, it was January at this time, and I was already beginning to get cold, so I said, you know, the door is locked, let's move on. And then suddenly the door came open, and as soon as it did, she screamed, "Sorry!" And there was a homeless man living inside, and he had all of his belongings inside this area. The floor was completely covered with blankets and clothes, and we apologized for the intrusion, and he smiled back at us and, you know, forgave us the intrusion, and he slowly closed the door from the inside. And the reason I don't have pictures of that now, and I'm not sharing you the location, is because, you know, maybe someone would find out that, and, you know, he would receive some police aggression. So when I wrote this article, I didn't include any pictures or the name of the place or the artist who created the installation for that reason. And so this talk is really about homelessness and also sanitation. So access to safe and clean drinking water is essential for the full enjoyment of life and all human rights. It is a human right in itself, as formally recognized by the UN General Assembly in 2010. Yet, unhoused people, including people sleeping rough in encampments or shelters, face extreme water, sanitation, hygiene, or wash insecurity. And according to a paper published by the International Journal of Hygiene and Environmental Health, open defecation, the overuse of limited available wash facilities carry the serious risk of hepatitis A, enteric infections, TB, leptospirosis, and you can see that really being played out with all of these sculptures, that they are policing homeless people, but also it's part of homeless people's need for these wash facilities. So yeah, the installation was commissioned by the city's Contemporary Art Museum with support from the banks, and they said it was open to all, 24/7, claiming to not only serve the employees of the surrounding banks, but also the homeless people who seek refuge in the park. I mean, I couldn't see it at the time, but from pictures online, I could see that there is this kind of metal grate on the bottom with a kind of tank to collect the urine, and there is no roof as well. So the homeless man living there would have been very cold, very wet also. There are no lights for nighttime use. There is no bin to safely dispose of needles, as some public toilets have. And more fundamentally, there are no hand washing facilities, no soap, no water, no dryer, no seat, no toilet paper. There is just a hole in the ground. So it's intentionally designed to not accommodate the needs of homeless people. making a kind of performance of caring, but essentially hoping the problem of homelessness might go away by itself. And we're going to look at the work of Martha Rosler. She's a sort of a thinker, a curator, and she created an exhibition, but also a book out of this. So in this book, it's called If You Lived Here, The City in Art, Theory and Social Activism. She says something that really relates to this sculpture and its approach to homelessness. She says, homeless people are constantly subjected to brutal pseudo-solutions that drain away personal energy and interrupt efforts at collective empowerment. Even the discreet charity of those who wish to help, such as those who would include rooms for homeless people in newly constructed public libraries, suggests that we have accepted the inevitability of this population. Why should we accept the failure of the state to care for the destitute? End quote. So public sculptures like the one I mentioned are really kind of cruelly excusing homelessness. The book developed out of a series of exhibitions, as I'm showing you there, also these sort of town meeting discussions, and they were held over the year of 1989. They included artists, academics, community activists, elected representatives as well, and they sought to really come together to reveal the crisis in American urban housing policies and the damage caused by unfettered real estate speculation. So in the second of these three exhibitions, it was entirely dedicated to homelessness. Others were dedicated to sort of property and policy as well. And in this particular exhibition you're looking at here, it's about sort of houselessness. So she's including houseless artists and information on houseless advocacy groups. And you'll look in the top left-hand corner there, there's a quote from the urbanist Peter Marcuse, and it says, homelessness exists not because the system is not working, but because this is the way it works. So it's again this idea that the policy is really failing homelessness. And so here you have the Homeward Bound community services. So yeah, she's really offering like real concrete solutions to homelessness. In the first picture there, you've got this sort of structure, the shelter built by the madhouses, and they used to go around New York building these shelters for homeless people. And then a few more things. I mean, here really drawing attention to LA, so LA's official housing project for the homeless, and that's a bench. And Martha Rosler, as a curator, is also playing with that idea with the presence of this bench to say, like, this is how homeless people are actually living day to day. Held at the Dia Art Foundation in New York, the project sought to draw a link between property speculation as well as the commodification of art, but really from within the art institution. To some extent, the street always remains partially outside of the gallery, whereas public art, I would argue, is part of urban architecture. As we've already seen, some public art installations are designed to wall out homeless people, but in the UK at least, in London, it appears there, oh, that's another image from the exhibition, in the sort of, these are postcards that have been amended from the city of New York. And that one there on the sort of bottom right, it says, they took away our sculpture, let someone else live here. So it's this idea that space is becoming aestheticized through public sculpture, public art, and why not have a practical use for it as well? This is in London. So there appears to be in London regulations that prohibit public art from providing shelter for the homeless, especially in urban environments. Speaking in 2018, the artist Yinka Shonabare referred to planning conditions around this 2014 sculpture titled Wind Sculpture. It was going to be installed in Howick Place, a kind of development, and very near London's Victoria Tube Station. And he said, the city didn't want homeless people to use the sculpture as shelter, although I didn't mind. in order to abide with the city rules, I had to create a form that was dynamic enough with less curves so that they couldn't rest underneath the sculpture. A sculpture in a shopping plaza is sometimes something like the spikes you see over heat vents, like we saw in Lisbon in that picture. Maybe also the armrests across the middle of a park bench, or a urine deflector in a street corner, part of a system of hostile architecture seen in urban areas designed to restrict homeless people's access to public space as also public wash facilities too. In Brixton, where I live, this is a photograph, and there are these massive pay-to-use public toilets, further exacerbating the area's homelessness and drug addiction problems. Men tend to piss up against the side of the building, refusing to pay the 20p, and streams of urine run through the street all day. And I'm reminded very much of a performance by David Hammons in 1981 called Pissed Off, and that's where this kind of project takes its name from, in which the artist urinated on a Richard Serra sculpture called TWU. It's 3 12-foot wide steel plates looming 36 foot high to form this imposing monolith on a tiny traffic triangle in New York City's Tribeca area. The sculpture only stood there for a year, and it was named after the Transport Worker Union, who were on strike at the time. So it was almost a message of solidarity. Now that sculpture is in Hamburg, Germany, so kind of really divorced from its original site, but also its original meaning as well. But Hammons made a very particular statement. He said, in relation to the performance that he did, where he pissed on this sculpture, he said, in New York City, a man doesn't have any access to relieve himself in a decent manner without having to buy a drink. And he ends by saying, keep the rage going. And this performance that he made with this sculpture was documented later on. But before we look at some of the performance documentation, let's have a look at the sculpture, whereby you can see already it's being used as a means to express outrage, and some graffiti has been cleaned off it. And with all of Serra's sculptures, as they existed in New York, but other countries, they were in this constant cleaning, renovation system. But they really provide this sort of site for anger for local residents. So this is David Hammons preparing his performance. So these photographs were taken by another artist called David Bay. And here he's sitting in the corner of the sculpture. You can see there's cans piling up in the corners, broken glass, posters, graffiti on the walls. And then next he pisses in the corner. And what's interesting in this statement of discontent is that if you piece the two images together, there you can sort of see the word like future, and then back here it continues. So I think it would have said no future. So it's someone saying this sculpture represents a sort of like collapse of imagination, an out in terms of freeing up public space. So yeah, he urinates on the sculpture, and then next he's receiving some kind of check from a police officer. Now, we don't know exactly what happened, or there's a lot of misreporting in this moment of time. So a lot of art historical essays say that he is being arrested or given a citation. But I interviewed Abby Schreiber, who is assistant professor of art history and African American studies at University South Carolina. And she told me that Hammons was not actually arrested and talked himself out of this ticket. So he did quite well. And then, I mean, Hammons has really been making a lot of work about urban spatial exclusion of homeless people since before and after Pissed Off. And so we can look at some of his other works. These were produced for a gallery. So since 2007, he's been creating these tarp paintings, torn tarpaulins, covering paint on canvas, mounted on these kind of makeshift frames. Their construction calls to mind homeless shelters, and he's really testing the limits of collectors' desires, kind of defiling the white cube, calling into question the art market's value system, turning an oil-on-canvas painting, the sort of staple commodity of commercial art galleries, into something cheap and reviled. And this was a 2019 exhibition he did for Hauser and Wirth in LA. So he filled the courtyard with tents, turning this kind of blue chip gallery into a homeless encampment. Just 4 blocks away, there is Skid Row, a 50-block homeless neighborhood in downtown LA, which contains thousands of unhoused people and rough sleepers. Some of the tents were screen printed with phrases like, "This could be you." You can just see that in red on the frontmost tent. And this is a kind of appeal for empathy, but also kind of morally implicating the gallery and the art world in the creation of these no-go areas or interdictory spaces, to use the terms Stephen Flusty coined in the book Building Paranoia, 1994. So Hammonds is not only gaming the art world, getting galleries to pay for piss-soaked tents, but also collapsing spatial zones, public and private, blue chip gallery Skid Row, collapsing in the spaces occupied by wealthy collectors and the nearly destitute as well. So we're going to move on to some more of the policy and look at how homelessness relates to kind of racialized politics as well. So as noted by a policy brief from the Water Centre at King's College London, states tend to punish people who are forced to urinate and defecate in the open rather than provide free-to-use public toilets across areas where they're needed most. Dr. Jessie Spear observes that homeless populations are depicted as dirty and dangerous in public policy, and their removal is often described as, quote, cleaning up public space. Under the UK's proposed criminal justice bill, so-called nuisance rough sleepers could be moved on or fined up to £2,500 or imprisoned, as if homeless people have that kind of money in their back pocket. The move to further criminalise homelessness comes after Suella Braverman, the then Home Secretary, vowed to restrict homeless people from using tents, infamously describing rough sleepers as a lifestyle choice. And writing on social media at the time, Braverman said, "We cannot allow our streets to be taken over by rows of tents occupied by people, many of them from abroad." And in discussions of public space and public art in the UK's right-wing press, there is definitely a link between notions of cleanliness and racial purity. What you're looking at here is a 2015 headline image from the Daily Mail. This is a kind of right-wing newspaper in the UK, and they ran a story about homeless Eastern Europeans camping at Hyde Park next to a memorial that commemorates the victims of London's 7/7 bombings. So the memorial you're seeing there is made up of a plaque and 52 steel pillars, one for each person killed in the attack. The Mail Online accused the group of, quote, cluttering the memorial with their sleeping bags and suitcases. And though providing no photographic evidence, they claimed that they had seen the people eating their dinner off the plaque and even using the memorial site as a makeshift toilet. Again referencing Eastern Europeans, 3 years later, the London Evening Standard incited a moral panic about homeless people washing themselves and their clothes in a water fountain in Hyde Park. Interestingly, these articles, they are, I think they're 3 years apart, but it's the same photographer who took the pictures, if you go online and look at the article. So he's sort of hounding these people for press and to sell these images. So there's a quote from a dog walker, and he says, "They were even washing their underwear. We were all looking on in shock." And Royal Parks, which manages the grounds here, said that it drained the Joy of Life fountain. That's the name of the fountain, the Joy of Life, so it could be sanitized. For the right-wing tabloids, racialized groups of unhoused people must be cleansed from public spaces and not permitted to access the joys of life. So we're coming to the end nearly, but I think the more you think about public space and homelessness, I found the more you can't ignore it, the more present it becomes in your own life. So this is a picture from my flat in London, and I live in an identical block to the one that you're looking at there, and it's designed by Leslie Martin, whose name you might know from Cam Gulbenkian, because he designed the original building there. So I remember coming here to visit Cam for the first time and finding this strange similarity between like home and Lisbon. But yeah, I mean, these blocks were built in a very utopian way, but they have since become quite dystopian. And on and off for a year and a half, a homeless man lived in my block of flats, and this is quite near Brixton as well. So the ground floor was broken really since the day, the ground floor door rather was broken since really the day we moved in, and it was always open. And the man, he was maybe 50, not much taller than 5 foot, white with brown hair. And we talked a bit, and he didn't understand everything I was saying, and I didn't understand everything he was saying. But sometimes I could hear him sing as he strolled around in the green space below the flats. And I think he was Portuguese, and he had this really beautiful singing voice as well. And living on the 10th floor, for a while he slept in the corner just outside the lift on this thin mattress of discarded duvets, laid down on the concrete floor, rain leaking in from the roof hatch, freezing cold at night. And it's worth just bearing in mind that according to Crisis, a UK charity for homeless people, the average death for homeless men in the UK is just 47 years old, and even lower for homeless women at 43, compared to the national average of 74 for men and 80 for women. And this is caused by poor sleep quality, inadequate diet, difficulties maintaining personal hygiene, problems accessing healthcare and maintaining treatment, as well as alcohol, drugs, mental health problems, and these are often multiple and overlapping, and they can exacerbate physical health conditions. So a couple of times I called up a housing charity who makes visits to people sleeping rough and helps them get off the street. And they made a visit to him, and he was gone a few days here and there. And when I asked if he had got any support, he told me that they had given him a room in a shelter for a few nights. The estate management who sort of run all of these blocks, there are 9 of these huge blocks that you're looking at, and then lots of sort of low-rise blocks as well. They did absolutely nothing. They would just come round and bleach the concrete every now and again when he was out. However, my neighbours, a family of 4 who basically have nothing, used to cook him food. It's always the people who have the least who give the most. No one on my floor ever harassed the guy or tried to move him on. And you could really tell the physical condition that he was in. He would cough all night and first of all try to clear his throat, and he would start wheezing, and you could hear him huffing to try to clear his throat. And then he would break into these uncontrollable coughing fits. And finally, there would be a kind of deep cough and the sound of his windpipe almost snapping. And then he'd have some brief relief for an hour or so, and then it would start over again. And I'd often see him on the streets walking with another man. He'd be power walking in a very single-minded way, the way only someone gripped by chemical dependency walks in their moment of need. And then early in the morning, he would sometimes scream at the base of the block, spinning and twisting with his hands wrapped around his ears. One evening in May, it was very warm. I saw him playing football with the kids on the grass, their mums chatting, barbecuing a fish on the picnic table. The kids were laughing and he looked very happy. And then I started to feel bad for sometimes wanting him to leave the flats. And then I didn't see him for a while. I thought something had happened to him. He'd maybe left the city or been locked up, or maybe something worse. He was, after all, already old for his years. And then just a few months later, I ran into him on the street and asked how he was doing, and he'd managed to get a bed in the council flats across the tracks. But for how long, he didn't know. So he was still in this state of impermanency. And then just to finish, how can the homeless go beyond just trying to stay alive? The man living in the artist-designed public urinal, that he occupied a structure specifically designed not to accommodate the needs of the homeless, can be viewed as an act of defiance. The same for Hammonds and his performance. The men in Brixton who refused to pay to go to the toilet to perform an essential bodily function. When people are denied their most basic needs, housing, toilets, clean water, then public art might become a site to express collective anger. Until there is complete system change and everyone can live in dignity, as Hammond said, keep the rage going. All right, thank you very much. Thank you. So we'll go to questions, yeah.
Yeah, so now we can open. Thank you so much for this lecture. Now we can open discussion to the audience. Pedro?
Hello. There are so many things that could be we can say after this. We can talk about probably the Portuguese experience, because one of the things that we still perceive in our cities is that what is public and what is not public. For us, it's very easy to understand. So the spaces that are perceived as public, but they are run by a private entity, they are not so often. We don't experience them so often as in London, that most public spaces are run by, and I remember in the end of the 90s, the Richard Serra sculpture was in front of the Liverpool station. So it was something that was made to that was how I perceived. Maybe I was being naive, and I didn't know and I'm not, I didn't know who owned the space, but for me it was, as an art student, it was an amazing Richard Serra in front of an important train station. Now with the changes, the city has changed a lot in that area, and probably the Richard Serra is in the middle of a private enterprise, and the access to it's not the welcoming totem for the station. So maybe the ground that the Serra wasn't even public. Maybe I was perceiving it as public, and it wasn't anymore. So, but in Lisbon, we still, as in the south of Europe, we still think that a square, sidewalk, a street, it's public. And so, and it's not. It's now. It's more often that spaces that are pretending to be public, and they are run by private entities, and the city thinks that it's a good deal. They give up the running of this as London does so many times. They don't. They feel that it's a good deal. They've been paying. They don't need to pay for the how do you say, the gardens, the services, everything. So in the end, you end up, not even the middle class cannot just sit and enjoy a coffee or you cannot bring your own sandwich, because if you sit, you pay.
Yeah.
So they are not meant to stay for a long time. But it's still here. It's still the sidewalks and the squares are which is what's perceived as public. It's still run by the city. So it's a little bit different. And so it's we are a little we are still catching up with this capitalist aggression. Yeah.
I guess like the indication that you're in a kind of semi-private areas when you start to see people in kind of uniforms with like walkie-talkies and body cameras, and you know, then they have a lot of cameras as well. They might close at a certain time as well, a square. It's quite clear, and I think they do that, you know, because they want people there who are spending money. They don't want like people skateboarding there or whatnot.
Yeah.
And yeah, they want to kind of keep these areas very safe and sterile, because also they have these commercial areas, but then above that you also have housing, and people have bought these houses, very rich, affluent members of London society. They bought them because they want to remain insulated from the public.
Or offices, and they are the headquarters of an important. Our electricity company made this new headquarters, and there are 2 parallel blocks. Of course, the planning that was authorized is these two parallel blocks that are perpendicular to the river. So you have this street in between, but it's not a public street. It's a place that you can cross. There's always someone, a security person there, and you cannot stop there. It's not, and when the planning was announced and there was a contest for the planning, it was perceived as if it was a street. It's not a street. It's not public. So it is a nice space, and the 2 buildings are parallel to each other, and you have this space, but it's not a public space. It's there are no places to sit. Even if you sit, you cannot go there and eat something. Even as a student that is bringing water and a sandwich from home, you cannot stay there and talk to a friend. So it's not so these strange public spaces that are not for but we still have next to it. There are squares with that are really public, with gardens, and people still can enjoy. So it's not really so offensive, because next to it we can still enjoy the city. So it's this is new. This reality, it will come. The capitalism will show its power.
Well, I hope not.
Yeah, and so it's
Thank you very much for that remark. I mean, it'd be really great to hear a lot about like the Portuguese context in terms of like public space, also public art as well. But I was noting with João earlier, like how much graffiti you see around the city. Maybe not so much public art, but a lot of graffiti, and how maybe people are kind of contesting the limits of public space and what you can say. It'd be really excellent to hear your own experiences there and how you respond to that.
O microfone pode circular de mão em mão, portanto sintam-se livres para o debate. João?
Is it fine? Do I need a microphone? Or is it good?
It's good.
We are recording.
Oh, okay. Good, nice.
Thank you so much, Henry, for your insightful talk and the questions it brings. Of course, first, we have to make this short consideration about ethical issues. You know, homelessness is the most contradictory event in our contemporary societies, because, as you've said, it's not only a condition, it's also a lifestyle, more and more so. and the idea of bringing it into some aestheticizing aesthetics about the homelessness. Okay, let's stop a bit. The thing is about art, because I'm thinking you are acquainted with Stephen Flusty text, Building Paranoia, and introductory spaces. The most innovative artifacts in architecture are being made in this area. So the most, innovative design is not building is not building in construction or building effects or technology, but into these introductory devices. And the fact is that art is being accused of not being a shelter. You know, this is sculpture, the infinite accumulation, just outside Liverpool Street Station by, I don't know the name of the sculpture, the artist, this Japanese, these bubbles.
Oh, Kusama.
You know these bubbles.
It's Kusama, Yayoi Kusama.
And the great critique by The Guardian, this is useless because no shelter was bring into the public space because she made just these amazing bubbles. So are we again putting the art into the accusation of being for nothing? Or so can we reflect a little bit about this? Because in architecture, we are always being asked for, what's the use of this? And that's not only an aesthetical issue, but also an ethical one.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much. And just this one. We'll talk a little bit after. Thank you. Thank
you very much. A lot to unpack there. That's a really interesting question. So I think it's quite important to not posit art as a solution for homelessness. And I hope I wasn't giving you that impression that I was saying that public art should provide shelter. I actually think it's a failure that the state think that it could be a solution. Like in the case of this sculpture in Germany, where I didn't show you a picture, but it had this public urinal designed by an artist. I think that's a really, really terrible use of public money, whereby you say to an artist, give us a performance of care and try to allow us to kind of have a public representation of helping homeless people without changing real policy or putting finances to shelter. It was amazing during the COVID pandemic in the UK, whereby to stop the spread of COVID, the UK government lifted all the homeless people off the street and put them in hotels. So the money exists and the will exists when it affects the general population, but only in these moments of crisis. I think it's really not art's job to solve these problems, but what art can do is, in its space, in public space, is to show how these cities are affected by territorialization, and also, reflect on just how difficult it is to navigate these spaces. And I think, all of the works that I mentioned, all of the experiences that I mentioned are more about kind of contestation rather than positing art as a kind of solution, which I think is not quite useful. And if we go back to the Martha Rosler text, she's saying, let's not rely solely on the charity of the libraries who establish spaces for the homeless. That's an ineffective solution to a massive, massive problem. In the same way that, like, a public art sculpture creating a shelter in a 1 meter radius for some rain is a really ineffective solution to homelessness. You have to be thinking much wider. And I don't think even public art is a kind of like a way to present policy, but more of a way to kind of present resistance and explore like what it is to be in a city, like how it affects your emotions, like who is closed in and who is closed out of spaces. But I can completely understand the premise of your question. Hopefully that answers it. Okay.
Can I? Yeah. Thank you, Harry, for your nice presentation and to show us different ways to use art in public space, because I think that is one of the main questions. When we put art in the urban or in public, I don't think here it's very difficult to understand what is public or not public. Even when you go to a mall, it's a public space, but it's private and so on. So for me, public, it's like when you can go through and pass and meet the others, when you can just have a conversation, you can have a confrontation, when you can. So in this sense, public, it's the city. It's we all live mostly in cities, no? So the problem of the homeless people, it's about this. How can we construct a system, a society that could provide to all of us, even the homeless people who don't want to live close to others or in the society, but we have to look at it, at the problem, at people, and so on. So in this sense, I think public art could effectively have a function on pointing or on making us questions and so on. So for me, the beautiful thing about your presentation is to see people using public art as meeting points, as points to do something, no, or even to sleep, or even to shelter, and so on. For me, it's very beautiful to see that could work for this, no? So I don't want to enter in this question about what's the function of art or not, but the main question for me is, could art, effectively, art in public space, could be not just a statement, but could be more active on drawing urban space or not? Because it's really a question, because art, what is art? What is urban art? What is urban space? What is architecture? What is urbanism? I think nowadays we are dealing with all these questions, this interdisciplinary approach about constructing space. And in this sense, you are talking about the Henri Lefebvre, the right to the city. You are talking about the open city, about Sené. You are talking about urbanism, micro-urbanism, or even these culture urbanism. And in this sense, a lot of artists are entering in this process of building, of designing the city, because the space is designed also by architects, by urbanists, by artists, by people that use the space. So the examples you bring here were more about to see how homeless people are or not dealing with the space, but could art in generally make a contribution to design the city? And another question is about this, when you put art in the city, you are aestheticizing the city. In doing so, even if it is like very strong or conflict pieces, like some of the Serra pieces, somehow they just don't like the pieces, they put it away and so on, but the memory of the pieces were there, and the discussion, the conflict were there, and so on. So the thing is, when you are putting these pieces in the space, you are making some voice on the space, and in this sense, you are aestheticizing. You are looking to this place, and when you are looking more to a space, normally the space earn value, and these places normally, when you put art acting. In Portugal, for instance, you have vils. It's, I don't know if you know these artists. He make the face of people who are living in old buildings, in areas that are in gentrification areas, and people are going putting away because they want to build more nice building and so on, and people are getting away. And he make the faces of the people in the buildings. It's with explosions. Now he makes some explosions, and after the explosion, appear the face of one of the people who used to live in this building. Now, it's a kind of an action. It's very, very nice, his work. But when they are doing so, all this area began more interesting even for investment, and the problem of gentrification starts because art is always in connection with gentrification. So I don't know, it's really a nice thematic that you bring us here to us, and it's very difficult to make a point on it, or to agree, or to make, I don't know, what you think about it. Maybe it's too much question,
No,
sorry. But many thanks for your thematics, because I think it's very important to talk about this.
Thank you very much for the question and the comments. Yeah, very useful. And in some ways, the two questions are interlinked, because we're talking about the function of art and whether it could have a design purpose. And I don't think, like, I'm interested so much in, like, a sculpture providing a shelter, or a sculpture that is a bridge, or something like that. I think it was actually Sarah who said that the social enjoyment of art is a function in itself. So I think that is very important, that people should be able to allow to enjoy art. As I say, it's these works, by virtue of being in public space, they can't help but become a canvas for the anger of citizens. When you put something in public space, it becomes a kind of, like a site for organizing, to express discontent. I mean, there's one sculpture that I talk about in another work, which it basically is these two clasped hands like this, and it's about this disaster that happened in a mill, whereby these workers were sent to go and clean a well, and the well contained poisonous gases. So one worker went down to check it, and then they were immediately overcome by the gas. And then the next one, and then the next one, the next one. And 6 people went down to this well, and they all died, and then workers around them had to be held back to stop them coming down the well. And that disaster happened in the early 1900s, and the sculpture was made many years later, I think in the early 2000s. And it became a monument to commemorate the workers, but also years later, now on International Workers' Memorial Day, to sort of pay attention to workplace safety. Trade unionists, they gather there, and so public art can take on like a function beyond the original creators' thinking as well. I think the example of Sills sounds really interesting, relates quite closely to Andrea Luca Zimmerman, who's a filmmaker, and there was an estate in London that was being demolished, and she put every face of the estate on the block as it was being demolished to try to stop the developers carrying out their course of action. In that case, it didn't work, but in another presentation, in another article, I've looked at the mural movement in the 70s and 80s, and there was one particular mural in South London where basically this whole row of houses, Victorian houses, was due to be demolished, and the residents, they defeated those plans, and then to celebrate this victory for them, they had a mural painted on the side of the last house, and it's depicting the residents pushing back the diggers, and then also it shows also the street being painted by the residents, and they're replacing the windows, and almost they're trying to say, celebrate this victory, but also trying to imagine like how their street might look if it had money, if they had like development. And interestingly as well, like the street, it remained as it was, like it didn't get knocked down. So it almost said to the developers, like, you cannot knock down this street. That was a mural by the Greenwich Mural Workshop. It's called the Floyd Road mural. So yes, I mean, like public art can perform this like very direct function, but I also believe that it can be enjoyed aesthetically as well. So it's these two things.
Our biggest train station, which was opened in '98, it's by this architect Calatrava, so it's quite flashy. So it has an underground. It's almost like a street, and it's supposed to be open in each sides. One of the sides goes into a shopping center. So, and this is a hub. So you can take a bus, you can take the tube, you can take the train, and it was constructed, and the city got this new and flashy architectural wonder with a prized architect, but it has many problems. Not only it's not very convenient to take the train because it's very windy, although it's very beautiful, but also the underground space. It has these curved walls that once they get in the lower part they get to be a bench, so you can sit, and because it's an underground street. Maybe I'm not saying it as well as I should, but it's how I perceive it. So it's quite long. So you have these two benches made of tiles in the Gaudi way, which is broken tiles, so it's white. And so a lot of people could sit there and wait for whatever transportation they were waiting, and run away from the wind. So what happened is that it's a point, because it's very central. Homeless people gather there, and in the evening it's also a place of shelter, and there is a public toilets there, and so recently, and for a long time, you could see them sleeping in this bench, because the bench is quite it's good enough. It's the other options would be worse. The other options would be under the rain, and it's good enough. Maybe they even took care of each other. They became a community, and they came, and in the evening they would sleep there, and there was no answer to those problems, to their problems. What happened now is that there are some rails guarding so they were evacuated from there because of security reasons, and they also told us that also for sanitary reasons, but there are facilities there. There are toilet facilities. Maybe they could put some showers there. Maybe they could improve. It's not so. It wouldn't be so difficult to answer for the basic needs of these people. And again, it's not it was shown as a public street, but it's run by the good thing is that it's run by a public company. The railway company is public, so they cannot just bring and there is also a police station inside the street. In the middle of the street there is a police station, so it's quite safe for. I don't think they became a community with police protection, with the toilet facilities, but they never made these shower facilities. What they made now is to put them out of there, because they were very bad they're very bad to the city because most tourists and even Portuguese, whatever people who live in and whatever nationalities live in Lisbon saw that every day, and in the evening they would sleep there, and dozens of people would sleep there. And so now you have these railings protecting the use of the benches. So we have this architectural wonder by Calatrava that made a place for anyone to sit, that it's quite long, so it's meters and meters of this bench that is very well designed. You can remember Gaudi. And now it's with railings that are protecting, so people cannot just, you cannot sit. Even if you are a pregnant woman in need, you cannot sit. So it's the city is fighting the homeless in the main station, because the main station cannot be closed. Like the most stations after the end of the train service, you close the station and that's it. It solves the problem of people sleeping there. This one, it's not. It was meant to be an open building, to be part of the city, so people would cross it. So it's quite a sad experience. It's a brutalist building with concrete. So it's getting dirty. It's getting aggressive, and it's not being humanized. So it's like the city is failing. The architecture was naive in a way. So it was more about the show off of the form of the architecture. But although some moments where you could sit and enjoy, so it's that's happening in the main station of the city. It's called Orient Station.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing. I mean, also any more experiences like that would be really interesting to hear, how people relate to the city and how they've experienced like homelessness or public art and these overlaps between the two, because kind of my research basis is just to go walking around the city in London or in Lisbon, and just to see like how it feels to be in these spaces, how oppressive are you being sort of slowly moved in one direction or another. I think if you pay attention to that when you move, you can really start to feel it. But yeah, if you have any more stories like that, that'd be so amazing to hear. Yeah, partially I'm sort of careful about not being a kind of British homeless tourist as well, because I think it's interesting if people speak from their own perspective as well. But we have a question there, it'd be great to hear.
So I was going to ask about how different uses of public spaces are perceived. For example, I skateboard, and a lot of times I have to deal with security. And I have the question, like, since there are architects here, like, how would you feel about the place you built having a different use that could be, like, to a certain degree destroyed? But I would also criticize that if it got destroyed by skateboarding, it wasn't built right, probably. I don't mean this as a big provocation or anything like that. It's just that from my experience, it's like I'm using the public space. I'm not like bothering people and stuff like that. I just want to use it. And if I did like a statue or something like that, and I saw people climbing it or doing stuff to it that I wouldn't think it would be the purpose of it, I would be fine with that, I think. Like if I built 4 walls and people started pissing there, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense because it's like a hidden spot.
The purpose. Someone was saying earlier that there are not that many private areas, so not like private security. So can I ask you, like, who is kind of like bothering you? What is the security that you're encountering like?
I mean, sometimes it's within security, and sometimes it's people, but I wouldn't count that as security. It's like just regular people. But I was talking more about like having limits to stuff.
I think. So I mean, I studied art history, so I'm not like a urban geographer. But what I would say is like one of the nice things about public spaces is that they can have lots of different uses, and they require people to kind of accept that they're going to be used in different ways. So you would hope that you wouldn't need to have like a space just for skateboarders, and like there could be some like overlap between people's needs and requirements, and that requires a bit of like acceptance that you can enjoy this space, and have your sandwich quietly, and then someone else can use it in a different way. That's just public space. I think you can't like. That's the nice thing. It's like one person can't dictate how it's going to be how it's going to be used. It has to be like this compromise. So I'm not so much in favor of like division, but maybe more in sort of like being a bit more compromising.
Just a question. Thank you very much.
Hi.
I'm wondering if you could tell me where do you think the public space tends to be more hostile, in England or in Portugal?
So I've been for a short stay in Porto some years ago, and back to Lisbon maybe 4 times. Probably spent like a total of 2 months here, I guess, in total. I would say definitely London. The comment I heard earlier about like there being less of these like semi-public private spaces, you don't encounter that. Whereas in London, even the Arts University, UAL, Chelsea, actually UAL, King's Cross. The area outside of that university is this controlled by security guards. There are kind of these very welcoming ping pong tables, but in order to use them, you need to go chat to the security guards to go get the bats, and they might not give them to you. And those spaces exist like all over London. In King's Cross. The biggest one is Greenwich, where you have the dome, the Millennium Dome, the O2 Dome. Where else that would be kind of more recognizable? There's just like so many of those spaces.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go on.
Just try to do this conversation.
Yeah, of course.
The reason I ask you is because I look at this image, and it reminds me Georgian Square of the 18th century.
Oh.
And the squares in England, they tend to be private, unlike a Southern European square, which is public.
Yeah.
And my perception, this is pure perception, is that the public space in England is much less interesting than in South of Europe. And perhaps this is why I only thought about it today. Why I also considered the arts in England much more exciting than in South of Europe, as a reaction to the non-quality of the public space. So it's just a reflection and a question at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. And then like the next level up from the UK is the US, like New York, and you can see that public space there is highly contested. Even more than the UK. Absolutely, I would agree with you there.
I would like to
well, in name of the Department of Architecture, it's a pleasure, I mean, to have you and to have this opportunity to cross, you know, like experiences and knowledge. I would like to invite you, if you will have time during this your passage in Lisbon, to come to our department, to to see our work. And we are in the end of the semester, so in 1 week we'll have a lot of things to see and to discuss.
I would love that.
So
Thank you.
In name of our direction.
Thank you.
I would like to put a question. I think you asked about the public space, right?
Yes.
And I would like to ask what you think. There's a difference between the homeless people in London and the homeless people in Cairo, in Portugal, or wherever. This is a little bit tricky, the question, because in somehow, this is the second question. There is, because I'm not expert on art, so I'm completely okay with it. I will never be, so it's not a problem. I'm an architect, so. There exists a form of art from the homeless people. Is it studied? Probably João also have some exists or not. I mean, it's something that I'm always wondering. Is the homeless? I mean, there are people probably probably they don't have access to the galleries or whatever, but.
Yeah, so the first
So it's
part
two
of
questions.
Yeah, the first part of the question, what is the difference between UK homeless and Portuguese? I mean, it's very difficult for me to answer that because like I'm living now in a relatively privileged area of Lisbon, like near São Bento. So there you don't see that many homeless. So yeah, I would need to you'd need to like really live in an area to like experience like how the population is existing. So it's just impossible almost for me to draw comparisons. The only thing I would say is like I've lived for like 4 months in Zurich, and there's so much provision for homeless people. You know, there are. I mean, they were very like sort of tidy people in general, and as a result of that, they have out of town homeless facilities. So they want to keep the streets very clean. So it's again privileging, I think, cleanliness and cleanness to some extent. But yeah, different countries have different ways of confronting homelessness, and then the second.
Even probably to be homeless.
Yeah.
Like in Africa, or in the north of Africa, the way you conquer the public space is completely different even from the south. So, in that sense, there are moments of homelessness that are not completely related with the kind of homelessness that you are speaking about.
Sure.
From the point of capitalistic point of view.
Sure.
So I think this could be also a trigger for
the next project. Yeah, how do you interpret
research? And this also, I think, super related with the public space.
Yes.
The definition and also the drawing or the designerly how the public space is appropriated and also redesign. The guy that was speaking about skateboard, this is all related with this.
For sure.
Unfortunately, he's not here, but I would like to ask him what if he prefers to skate in a strange place that is not designed for skateboarding, or he prefer to go for this park that is.
He's not here. You have to find him later. But to the second part of your question, this is this exhibition by Martha Rosler, and yeah, it includes homeless artists as well. So I mean, I think in my research this is quite rare, and this is 89. So I haven't seen too much more. Sometimes, like I notice in the UK. Housing charities will commission artists to create sculptures, but they tend to be like a bit sensationalist. So you know, outside of King's Cross Station, the main station, they would have like a huge sculpture of a homeless man, and trying to sort of like engage people in debate. But it's quite literal, you know, it's like, here is a homeless person, look at them. But yeah, since '89 and Martha Rosler, I haven't seen this like focused discussion or an exhibition of homeless artists. There was a question there, I believe. No? There was one somewhere there. No? It's not working.
Uma última questão? Sim.
So my question would be based on what you talked today is, as an architecture student, should we as architects or artists in the future, maybe we change jobs, should we consider always the housing problem in our cities and also the public space as a need? Or should it be individualistic and just think about the, how do I say, the need of the architecture project? Maybe it's, I don't know, residential space. Should I think also about public space and how can other people from the city use the site? Or should it be, I don't know, what would you think? Or what is your opinion on that?
I think, yeah, as architects, you would have to be. So I think it's one thing to design facilities for homeless people. I think that's good, but the government should be providing policies that are helping homeless people have their own homes. So it shouldn't necessarily be up to the architects if the government is doing their job, which they are never. So you have to consider, if you build a building like this one that I live in London, you have to consider like how it could be used in ways that you had not anticipated, that you couldn't predict. Like all of the doors there, they are magnetized. And if you do this, like you can't open it, but if you take it with two hands and like this, you can take the door off and it will open. And as a result, then people just come and go as they please. Like, so in that case, to secure a building, and I think security is a good thing, generally speaking, for families, for kids, then maybe have a different mechanism for a door. I mean, this building that you're looking at now is full of problems because, like Grenfell Tower, you might have seen in the news, the outside is covered with a flammable cladding, like an outside exterior cladding. So, yeah, a few years ago, Grenfell Tower caught fire, and the fire spread very, very rapidly because it was covered in this cladding. That was a thing about, you know, not necessarily the architects, but the council using very, very cheap materials. But in terms of homelessness, I think, yeah, you just have to, if you're going to design something, to expect that maybe a homeless person would find a way to find shelter or to make up for the lack of public toilets. They might use an area, a corner, as a toilet. I think it depends what kind of development you're working on, whether you're working in the public sphere or working in the private sphere. If you're going to build like a train station, then yeah, it should have like toilets and yeah, maybe also some more wash facilities as well. It depends what kind of architecture you're thinking of designing. Yeah, sorry, I can't give you super direct questions answer to your question.
So just to finish, I will share just a reflection with you, because I think it's very important to have architects here, and we are in a country where we have two Pritzkers, right? Cisa Vieira and Eduardo Souto Moura, and a legacy of architecture socially engaged, right? Right, socialists, and then little by little, we can discuss it. But little by little, now we are in malls and generalistic architecture that is very bad generally and stereotyped, and now hostile architecture. It's even another step. It's not anymore iconic or bad architecture. It's hostile architecture. So it's a reflection we have to do, right? What is the job of the architect? To build no matter what, for who pays? Or do we have social responsibilities and ethic responsibilities? I think it's a big discussion for all of us, right? Artists and architects and citizens. And I would like to ask you just shortly, briefly, to finish our meeting, to tell us about this experience you told me of this mural in station, where you found a mural made by an artist in this station that was partially destroyed. And it make you think about the importance of public art in public space, right?
Yeah.
And just another topic is that it was wonderful when the architects were in the fine art school with sculptors and painters, and there was a knowledge that was circulating between all of us, and it reflected in the production of architects and an idea of city, right? And in artists also. And nowadays we are much more spread, and it reflects on the kind of more poor experience of construction. Okay, just this souvenir, I think it's very beautiful how you got aware about public art somehow.
Yeah, so this was when I was very, very young. You can see a little collection of images. This is on the Underground in London, and the station is Tottenham Court Road. And I used to live in the suburbs growing up as a kid. I used to live in Zone 7. Usually if you go to London, you're in mainly Zones 1 and 2. And there are 9 zones, so I lived like more or less on the outside. And I used to pass through the station every time I would come in. And as each time I would come in, I developed this real like unconscious relationship with this mural. It's by Eduardo Pelozzi, and he's actually a Scottish artist, but his parents are from Italy. His dad is from Italy, and he's a very unique artist. He made a lot of work about pop art and sort of industrial themes as well. And here he's actually created a mural around the local shops, so they depict items that you can buy. You know, one of them I really like is of a saxophone. This one I like. Yeah, and there are like music shops around. And what happened with this station a few years back is they ripped about half of it out, and some of it was literally just destroyed. Because they had to reorganize the station, and then some of it was taken to Scotland in a museum where the artist is from. And I remember feeling like so distraught, like so sad, because the geography that I had of London, part of it in my mind had been like taken away. And I think there's a real impression that when you move through spaces, like public art can form part of that mental map that you have of a place, and you really notice it when it's not there. So now I have to look at Paolozzi's work through Google Images or go to Scotland. But yeah, when it's taken away, you really feel what it is to you. So yeah, I remember telling Joao about this last week, and yeah, it's a bit of a sad. Even to look at it is a bit sad, but. I think that's also the power of public art as well. It can really make you feel something and have a direct impression on you as well.
But it's a proof that when we have the habits, we miss it, right? When we don't have the habits, we don't miss it. So policies are so important to create aesthetical habits. So thank you very much, Henry Broome, for your great lecture and your time, and thank you too.
Thank you.
E deixo-vos o convite a docentes e discentes. Na próxima terça-feira fechamos o semestre e este ciclo, Great Artists on Campus, com uma importante fotógrafa internacional chamada Cristina de Midel. É uma importantíssima fotógrafa. Está aqui o Orlando Franco, que está na organização deste encontro, e é a atual presidente da agência Magnum, portanto, sintam-se bem-vindos. Se é presidente de alguma coisa, já tem outro valor da Magnum. Portanto, sintam-se convidados, está bem, passem a palavra para sermos muitos e bons neste encontro. Obrigado pela vossa presença.